So I've come a huge distance, all the way down the main line from Guildford in Surrey. That's where I'm based. And I've got a number of passions in life, and I feel blessed that I can speak very openly with you all tonight about both of them, to be honest. So we're going to cover a lot of content, a lot of subjects. You can all relax. I'm not going to sell anything to you. It's just going to be hopefully a really fulfilling, enjoyable evening for you all, and hopefully everybody will take something away. So, just very quickly, just a quick show of hands. Who's got children in the room? Okay. And keep your hands held up. Who maybe plans to have children in the future? Or who's got grandchildren? So look, it's a subject that's close to many of our hearts. Very endearing. And I think we all share the joy of the love and joy of bringing up, passionately our youngsters. The way we do that is incredibly diverse, and I have to say I have some challenges in how we bring our 4 children up. It's not easy. I haven't found a book that tells me everything on parenting, and I learn every single day, and my children remind me that as well, every single day. And one of the challenges I've set myself, I retired from corporate life 2.5 years ago, was do I want my life and that of my family to run within boundaries, or to have a boundaryless life? And I've decided that I want to do something very positive about that, not just for my 4 children, but between myself and my 4 fellow directors. We've got 17 children between us, so maybe we should have got a TV. So we've been incredibly busy at work and at home as well. But what we found is that after 26 years of corporate life, and maybe some of you may be able to relate to this was the route I took. Higher education, I then did my degree in the late 80s at Sheffield City Polytechnic. Who can remember polytechnics? Yeah, way back when. And yeah, I was one of the first years that had student loans. Had a job for 26 years. I was very fortunate. I ran many businesses around the US, EMEA, Asia Pacific region. Saved up, got a deposit, and got through into pension systems. And I guess now I'm fortunate that I have the ability and have the courage to choose retirement at the age of 45. But life's not over. I want the grey juices to flow, and I want to be creative, and I want to be alive and contribute something back. And I've decided that entrepreneurship for our youngsters is something that I really want to push forward with my youngsters. So over the next half an hour or so, just going to share some nuggets and things that are very precious to me, and hopefully they'll resonate with you. Does anybody know what that is, or where it's from?
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, exactly. So for the employees and self-employed, where 5% of the wealth is, but 95% of the population, or business owners who own the systems and the investors who own the investments, 95% of the wealth and 5% of the population. Now I have to say I can't verify that, but having been on this earth for 40 odd years, I don't think that's far off the mark, to be honest. And I know what area that I would rather be. Okay, I've spent a long time from doing my degree to retiring in that space. And yeah, I may well have been successful. But the pivotal thing for me was the more successful I was, the less time I spent with my children. And I'm not very proud to say that I missed a lot of their upbringing. Okay, I'll introduce to my children in a little while. But that's something that is repeated time and time and time again. And you simply cannot have that time. And I realised too late, really, and missed my eldest son's formative years. I'm also an engineer, and you can see that because I've lined my kids up in a straight line. We're going to town like that every Saturday. Our business, which we set up as we left corporate life, my 3 fellow directors, there's 4 others, run Equa Group, and also Equilife, and some of these slides are taken from a lot of what we do on a regular basis. And I also am a fellow host, so I really appreciate the effort and passion that goes into arranging evenings like this. So would you all like to give a round of applause to my fellow hosts? Run an awesome event, and I know how hard it is, so well done. Has anybody been to Brooklands? Thank you, both of you. Thank you. Four of you. So we're in Surrey, out near Weybridge at Mercedes-Benz World. So if you like cars, racetracks, something different, I don't allow any selling, and just a really good time, come down for the whole afternoon. So on a very different day to PPM Waterloo or any other events in the area, so you've got the opportunity to do them all in the area. So something new for everybody. Steve Jobs said, don't waste your life living someone else's dream. Okay, life is incredibly precious, and I know that, and it's something that I want to take you back. I live in Guildford, in the stockbroker belt. I'm very fortunate in the Surrey Hills. But my life started in Boston, Lincolnshire. Has anybody ever been to Boston? Wow, excellent. I said that one day to somebody. I said, have you ever been to Boston? And they said, yeah. And then they paused and said, well, not really. I stopped there for a wee on the way to Skegness. Probably is one of the most endearing parts of Boston. It's on the way to Skeg. But when I was 18, I decided to leave home and went to do my degree in construction at Sheffield City Polytechnic, as I said. And I'd never been to a lot of things, the cities, bright lights. I had quite a conservative grammar school education. And in my first year at college, I got the opportunity to go to my first football match. And that was back in 1989. And going to a first FA Cup semi-final match was just incredible for me. The crowd coming out on the pitch, all the players, the ticker tape, it was just incredible. And then at 3 o'clock, when the whistle went, as the referee got play underway, some of the crowd never heard that whistle at Hillsborough that day, and that, in fact, some of the crowd would never hear another whistle again. And I was 18, just turned 19 actually. And there on that day I saw things which I'll never share with anybody, and people went through an awful lot worse than what I did. But when you go through something like that at such a young early age, it sears something on your soul that, to be quite frank, I didn't know how to handle. And when I moved into corporate life as a young man after college, I decided to live my life to its full, and that meant trying to find the bottom of my reserve tank and just driving every ounce of passion and achievement out of my life. That happened in outside of work. I was a free fall skydiver throughout most of my 20s. So Rob and Mark have helicopters, or they don't have them, but they fly helicopters. So my passion was skydiving out of helicopters. So I used to love that. Being in the TA, I've just recently given up ultramarathon running. So I've run across the Sahara and 100 miles in a day and long multi-stage races. So everything to try and drive every ounce of passion. And when you realise some of my background, you realise why nobody can put any more drive in than I can. Others will achieve a lot more than what I can, but I'm only competing with myself. So that with that backdrop, that helps me share some of my passion that also extended into corporate life. When I walked out of corporate life, it took me 9 months to exit as we restructured businesses. I resigned from 7 companies. I was a board director of 7 companies around the world at that time. So you learn a lot in life, and if we can share just some of those glimmerings with our younger generation, then I think our society will be so much more richer in the future. So way back, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the Daily Telegraph ran an article, and they interviewed about 300 nurses, and these nurses were in were caring for the dying. And they were assessed and asked to contribute what the sum of the wishes of the dying were. And they came up with 5 general terms that came time and time again. And I'd like you to think of the preciousness of life and think how our children only have one life and how every second counts. Some of these are pretty touching. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not a life others expect of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. The last one for me is a real killer. I wish I'd let myself be happier. Has anybody else felt themselves being busy for the sake of being busy? No, I did. 26 years. Who would like to leave a legacy? That's pretty much it. I hear the word legacy time and time again, particularly in property investment circles, and I get that, I seriously do. This brand here, Patek Philippe, as I said earlier on, I'm an engineer, and I just love the precision engineering of horology, of watchmaking. You know, the preciseness, all the movements, the jewels, the contrasting of the different metals, absolutely phenomenal. I believe that's the peak of engineering globally. But what I like about Patek Philippe is their marketing. You never actually own a Patek Philippe, you merely look after it for future generations. So you start to question what a legacy actually is. That legacy is an asset. But every one of us is going to leave a legacy, whether we like it or not. Some will leave a pile of cash, some assets, some will leave doom and gloom and derision and bills, some structure in their lives. What my aim is to provide custodianship. If we can provide custodianship with our youngsters, who are then equipped with the life skills to be able to take our legacy, should they wish, they may not have the same aligned views of ourselves, but who can take a legacy and take that to increase heights, I believe that would be a superb investment for society. So everything I do is look at a multi-generational legacy. So has anybody here got a pension? Yeah? Has anybody here got a SIP or a SAS? Okay. That's something that I decided to do when I came out of corporate life 2.5 years ago. I decided that no longer did I want any IFA or any banker dealing with my funds. Okay, I wanted my hands on the levers of my life and I wanted to operate that on my own terms. I may not make the right decisions every time, but I'm damn sure I'll make a decision every time. So I decided to move my funds out into a SAS, a small self-administered scheme, and the predominant reason for that was, I mentioned 4 of us came out of corporate life. Well, actually there were 5 of us, and 18 months ago Peter passed away at the age of 52. Does everybody remember the 3% stamp duty hike, 31st of March last year, 18 months ago? Pete, we're pretty ambitious, we don't do things by halves. So he had 6 HMOs, or 6 properties that completed on that afternoon of the 31st of March. So life was getting pretty stressful for many of us in the room. And at the end of that day he went home, he kissed his wife and his young daughter goodbye and put the bike in the boot, went to Gatwick and went cycling to Spain. And had a massive heart attack on his road bike and was probably dead before he hit the tarmac. Now Peter leaves two beautiful girls, one 18, one 21, and his 3rd daughter from second marriage was 2 years old. And little Florence will never know her dad, will never remember it. Very sad. And the reason why I say that is that Peter was in the process of transferring his pensions out of Standard Life or Prudential or wherever it was and moving it into a SAS. Sadly, Peter didn't survive long enough to complete that task. Peter's wife, Joey, got 50% of Pete's pension. So forget your yields, Forget whether your pension's going to make plus 3%, minus 3%. If you die and you're worried about your legacy for future generations, they ain't going to get much of it. All pensions do vary, so you need to take some serious advice on it. If Pete had, or if any one of us with pensions, check your small print, but if one of you pass away with your partner, car accident or something, God forbid, chances are your children will get nothing out of that pension. And for those two reasons alone, I don't care what advice I'm given in terms of what my yields will be on my corporate pensions, that's why they came out. If Peter got his money in a SAS, his pension would have remained whole for future generations. Bit of food for thought. So if you don't know anything about SASs and would like to know more, I've set up a Facebook group specifically for SASs. If you look at SAS, SSAS, SAS Investor Group, just join SAS Investor Group and just mingle with like-minded people. I'll approve you later on this evening, and maybe explore that. It may be for you, it may not be. That's just some areas of thought. We must equip, in my humble opinion, our children for a pace of change. A pace of change that is so far different and so exceeds any level of change we've seen in society to date. And there's been a lot of change, absolutely. 1990 was when the internet was formed, give or take a few months. So think how long we've come from there. I remember 96, 97 having my first IBM ThinkPad. Anybody remember those? Black ones? I thought it was quite cool. Who's ever heard of this phrase? If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. I used to love that phrase. I now don't agree with that. I think that is flawed logic in today's society. If you do what you've always done, you'll increasingly get less of what you've always got. You'll get left behind. No longer doing nothing will just preserve what you've always had. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. See, we must adapt to change, every one of us, and we must equip our children to deal with change. And one of the fantastic ways of dealing with change is that power of anticipation. And if we can teach our children to be bold enough, brave enough, face adversity, face failure full on, and anticipate what the world is going to be in the future, they'll be incredibly powerful human beings and will lead great lives. I'll just give them some examples here of some of the change that is going on around us and continues to do so. WeWork. Has anybody worked at a WeWork office? Yeah, a few of you. Fantastic. I used to run large construction and global infrastructure projects. Probably done about 3 million square feet of office fit out. And in the 90s, it was very cellular. Everybody had an office. Every director wanted the name on the door to go with the car parking space outside. Then in the late 90s, it became a bit more open plan, and it became more communal. You had coffee bars, and then you could put your laptop on a bench. You know, office has changed. It's working. You know, it's changing all the time. Now, who wants to work in an office? How many here are existing entrepreneurs? Okay, and keep your hands up. So of those, how many of you actually want to work in an office? Every hand went down. We've got about 30 million GDP going on at the moment in various developments. We don't want an office. We haven't got one. Okay, so society is changing. It's changing how we use stock, and we'll turn to that with commercial conversions. How we repurpose aging infrastructure and aging stock. It's hugely compelling. So all these areas give a massive opportunity. A friend of mine who's just moved back over to Vancouver as one of the founder members of Ripen, which is a very different type of business, looking at the CVs of children. We are heading towards an output-based economy, not an input-based economy. Nobody cares how long you work, how many hours you work. It's the output at the end. What do most CVs say? They tell you how long you worked, how long you've endured, how long you put up with a job in a certain office. Okay, so Ripen is a technology which records what you actually do. People don't care if you're being employed. What they want to understand is you're a website designer and you design that website, or you structure this new piece of software which has got this fantastic Infusionsoft piece of equipment that Sachin's just selling to the States for millions. You know, these type of achievement, that's the output-based economy that we've got to attune our children to and be prepared. You know, we've got this world here, the largest company that hasn't got any stock or hasn't got any vehicles. And this comes back to future principles based on past principles. Quote here from Mark Twain: the two most important days in your life are, anybody know? Two things? Sorry, say again?
I said the day of death and the day of birth.
Nearly. The day you're born and the day you find out your why, your purpose in life. What's the passion that underlying drives? I can tell you, every single investor, I deal with investor relations in our group, every single investor I speak to who talks to me, I ask very open questions about what they actually want in life. And hands up, who thinks one of the answers is a great economic return? Yeah? Every one of them. So is it worth talking about a great economic return? I've never been surprised by somebody saying yes. Okay? It's something deeper than that. Something really deeper. And that's what I'm trying to understand. You know, what motivates, what gets people jumping out of bed in the morning? Gives them passion, that zest for life. And if you can find that meaning in life, and you can find that meaning for your children, what an amazing differentiator that will be. Not just for your children, but for society in general. So with Young Entrepreneur, we're trying to create a number of things, and this will grow over time. We're trying to create confidence and self-belief. Not knowledge. I don't think general knowledge kind of gets anybody anywhere. Applied knowledge. The ability to take a certain set of knowledge, data, and apply it directly to something. Impactfulness, if you like. Prepared, well equipped, we've mentioned that phrase a few times, to lead an exceptional life of choices. The array of choices, so they can be nimble, agile. They're not going to have jobs for life, so if we don't prepare them to be nimble and agile, then that's going to come as a rather crushing blow when their lifelong ambition of staying in a full-time job for a while is whipped from underneath them. And ambition, hunger, that ambition, that drive, nothing will stay in the way. Yes, to be agile, yes, you can change your mind, but that ambition. So three things: prosperity, abundance, and giving, that contribution back to society.